there, guys and girls, welcome back. So recently we did a video on assertive versus defensive riding techniques, and kind of popped into my head about, should you drive a car the same way you ride a motorcycle, you know, with that same attitude? Because basically I mentioned in that video, definitely go check that one out afterwards if you want to, about how my style, in my opinion, is very assertive. I'm always looking for the overtakes, always looking to filter. I'm always looking to be the person that makes the first move, so that I am in control of whatever is going on, you know. I'm in control of what is happening at any one time. So I'm in control of as many scenarios as possible. And I kind of thought to myself, well, do I drive the same way like that? And should you? Well, again, my opinion on this is yes. I believe myself to be quite an assertive driver, as well as an assertive motorcyclist. And I mean, I learned to ride a motorcycle first before I started driving a car, so I do kind of wonder if that's had a bit of an influence in the way how I drive my car. And arguably, riding a motorcycle makes you a better driver anyway, because it gives you more spatial awareness. You know, it does, because the best way to kind of survive on a motorcycle is to be assertive, and more often than not is to be an assertive rider. And so when you apply that same logic to a car, it also does kind of make sense in a lot of ways, you know, because you're always trying to ease congestion. You're always trying to prevent people from doing stupid things. Yeah, putting yourself in a position on the road that stops people from doing stupid things. And kind of like, it's an attitude. It's like an assertive attitude to driving. And I don't know, I mean, definitely let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you drive the same way that you ride? I mean, of course, you're not going to be able to filter, you're not going to be able to overtake as easily in a car, but just that kind of mentality, that attitude towards riding a motorcycle, do you apply that same kind of logic to driving your car? I think I do, but it's a little bit toned down in the sense that I'm not trying to take all the opportunities that I possibly can to overtake, to get in front of the traffic, to try and just in a car you've got to flow a little bit more with the traffic, you know. You've got to anticipate what's going on, but at the same time you've got to kind of go with the flow a lot of the time when it comes to driving a car. Whereas a motorcycle, strictly speaking, you don't have to. You have the option, you have the space on the road to kind of ride kind of like how you want to, and ride in a more assertive manner. But at the same time, there are definitely things that you can learn from riding a motorcycle that you can definitely apply to driving a car. And I mean, things like even just being aware of motorcyclists, it's one of those things actually that I don't see a lot of people doing, but it's probably because they don't actively know that that's what they should be doing, that they should be looking out for motorcyclists. Because of course, I mean, motorcyclists, they make mistakes, and a lot of them, because they are assertive, borderline aggressive forms of riding, they might put themselves in sticky situations where drivers would have to respond to avoid crashing into them, to avoid kind of basically to avoid the motorcyclist getting involved in some kind of crash. And more often than not, drivers are quite, they're quite lenient in that kind of way, where they will let motorcycles get through a lot of the time. So some people don't like filtering, but when it comes to overtaking, a lot of the time drivers, they don't mind motorcyclists overtaking or filtering, getting out the way. Basically, they don't usually mind that, at least in my personal experience. But it's things like that though. I do tend to have more of more of a what's the word? More of a I don't know, like I got like a spidey sense, you know, more of a spidey sense towards motorcycles. You know, letting them filter, letting them overtake, things like that. You know, I just try to, I have that mentality in the back of my mind that, you know, I am in a bigger vehicle and I can cause a lot of problems for a motorcyclist if they're trying to filter or if they're trying to ease congestion or something like that, something to that effect. But yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to say exactly what you would do between the two, because I mean, they're totally different machines. Come on, people. Yeah, they're totally different machines, but I think it's more about an attitude thing. It's more about a mentality thing. You know, if you're a defensive motorcyclist or a defensive driver even, then will that make you a defensive motorcyclist? Maybe. It could do. And so a lot of this does come down to your mentality as a motorist, as a road user. Kind of like, how do you respond to certain scenarios, you know? I'll tell you, a great example actually is how would you respond to emergency services vehicles. So if there's one coming up behind you, say there's a police car with the blues on, they're coming up behind you, you're in a car, what do you do? More often than not, people, they slow down, they try to pull over, they try to give room and things like that to allow the emergency vehicle to get through. But you know what I found? That's a very defensive way of letting them through. I actually think that continuing to move, and if anything, move faster, is better for an emergency services vehicle, because the more the traffic is flowing, the more gaps they have to get around the traffic. It's a really funny thing, that, because more often than not, if I continue moving, or at least move into an area where I have the room to give them, then that's the action I'm going to take more often than not. But yeah, you see a lot of the time, and most people, they aren't like that. They automatically have a very defensive maneuver. They maneuver very, very defensively when it comes to those kinds of situations. And a lot of the time it just ends up being a worse situation for that emergency services vehicle, especially for ambulances and fire engines, just because they're physically bigger, they need more room, and UK roads aren't exactly that big to begin with, you know? They're not like American roads. And so it does kind of, in scenarios like that, having that assertive motorcycle mentality can also help with your driving. It makes you kind of more perceptive. It kind of makes you see more around you. It makes you more aware of your surroundings, not just of you, but also of what's going on around you in more ways than one. You know, it's not just so you can filter or overtake or something like that, but also to, well, respond to those kinds of things. Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, because you're kind of going into the realms of human psychology and human nature, and I mean, well, that's an absolute minefield. Well, let's hope I don't hit any more red lights, eh? But yeah, I think that the biggest thing that you should apply to driving a car from riding motorcycles is that mentality, that assertive mentality, to be the one that makes those decisions, yeah? Be the one that kind of I don't know, because it just kind of makes it easier for everybody else if you are making the decisions for people. You know, more often than not, people, they don't know what to do in a particular situation. But if you force their hand, then, you know, people, they only have, at that point, they only have one decision to make, or two decisions to make. It becomes a lot easier for people to kind of understand. And again, that all comes down to just perception. Your awareness, your ability to see what's beyond what's happening in kind of like your immediate surroundings. I don't know, I think for me that is the biggest thing that I've noticed in the way how I drive. When I think about it critically and when I reflect on the way how I drive, yeah, a lot of that mentality comes from riding motorcycles, because it's the best way to survive on a motorcycle. So if it's the best way to survive on a motorcycle, then of course, I mean, why not apply that same logic to driving a car? There's one sticking point here that I do want to mention, that sometimes in your assertiveness, you expect others to be as assertive as you are, and bloody hell, that's an awful drain cover. And but they're not. People, they aren't that assertive, and so, like for example, you expect people to take gaps on roundabouts, and they don't. Things like that, and that kind of thing can get really, really frustrating, because you're like, I could have made that gap. 2 or 3 cars could have got through that gap on the roundabout, but this person in front that's blocking everyone behind us didn't make the gap. Especially when it's incredibly busy, and you know what it's like here in the UK. It can be awful sometimes trying to get around. I suppose that's a very similar story to most places these days, but yeah, it can get you in trouble sometimes. Having that assertive mentality can get you in trouble in a car. On a motorcycle, it's not such a big deal, because you're able to kind of ignore most traffic more often than not, you know. And so that is the one thing that for me, that's the one thing I've had to try and learn, is don't expect other people to be as assertive as you in a lot of these situations. Yeah, it's like, you know, like, I mean, that example that I kind of came up with earlier about emergency services vehicles, you know, you might do the right thing to give them as much space as possible, but it only takes one other driver in front to stop all that progress, you know, to just block up the road, to, yeah, basically just, there was no point in you doing that to begin with, because someone else in front of you hasn't understood the situation, or they may not even have been aware that an emergency services vehicle is even behind them, you know, and trying to get past. Which, by the way, whilst we're kind of on the topic, in the UK, if there's an emergency services vehicle behind you and it's gridlocked and you're at a red light, it's still illegal for you to run that red light, alright? So technically speaking, they can still give you a ticket if you kind of move in front of the red light to allow an emergency services vehicle to get through. Alright, so it's just one thing I want you guys to keep in mind, is that it doesn't matter how assertive you are, you might not necessarily want to do that, even though it's, you know, meant to be in kind of good faith, and you're trying to help someone get to their destination quicker, help a police officer or a paramedic get to their location quicker. But yeah, in those situations, unfortunately, you have to stand still. You have to stay where you are, and you're only allowed to move when the light turns green. Then at that point, you can try and maneuver to give them that extra room that they need to get past. But yeah, guys and gals, I mean, that's just a little short video here for you today about rider mentality compared to driver mentality, and where the differences are, and yeah, how you should or shouldn't apply certain attitudes towards riding a motorcycle to driving a car. And it'd be interesting to see what you guys think down in the comment section below, if you've made that kind of analysis yourselves. Kind of, yeah, what's the deal? What's the deal with your driving habits, and have they been influenced by the way how you ride a motorcycle? And has that been a bad thing or a good thing for you, do you think? Definitely drop that down in the comment section below and let me know what you guys think on this very, very interesting and potentially divisive topic. Yeah, thank you ever so much for watching. Leave a like, hit subscribe, and thank you again for joining me on this very wonderful day. Definitely check out the video that we've got coming up on the end screen. Ride safe, guys and girls. Take care. We'll catch you all in the next video. Have a good one.